Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Durga Parameshwari Kaza, Head of Vessel Insight, Edge IoT Infrastructure and Connectivity Products at Kongsberg Digital. I'll be moderating this webinar along with my colleague, Jan Tore, Solution Architect for Vessel Insight, and expert from DNV, Jarle Kohl, Head of Digital Ship Systems at DNV. We at Kongsberg Digital are shaping the future of work by applying game-changing technologies to some of today's biggest challenges across key industrial sectors. In maritime, our goal is to increase operational efficiency, strengthen emissions management, and lower the cost with data-driven decision support from ship to shore and across offshore installations with our Kongsberg Digital maritime products. As all of us are aware, the maritime industry continues to evolve and embrace digital transformations, and vessels become increasingly connected. The importance of robust cybersecurity and data infrastructure standards are becoming very, very critical these days. Today, we are here to discuss why these standards are not just a technical necessity, but a strategic priority for ensuring the security, reliability, and efficiency of your operations. In the world of Vessel Insight, where real-time data is the backbone of decision-making and operational efficiency, protecting this data is paramount. We will explore today how implementing robust cybersecurity measures and adhering to data infrastructure standards can safeguard your vessels, crew, and sensitive information from potential hackers and threats. These practices will also build trust with your stakeholders, ensure compliance with regulatory requirements, and ultimately drive the long-term success of your business. Our commitment to cybersecurity and data infrastructure standards. KDI is partnering with the DNV to achieve these security goals, positioning ourselves as a market leaders. We are proud to share feedback and reflections from DNV Maritime CEO, Mr. Knut. Without further delay, I welcome Jarle Kohl and Jan Tore to share their expertise and enlighten us. Over to you, Jarle.
Thank you, Durga. So let me try to share something that we see digitalization, what's happening in that area. The core of DNV over the last 160 years has to be supporting the industry to design and operate vessels in a safe manner. This, of course, will change over time, and the digital transformation will make it different. We have to react and do it in a different way. Our CEO said that there's going on a renaissance in the maritime industry. It's an interesting expression, but I think we're really having changed. It's a continuous change. But look, let's not only look at the risk and safety, look at the opportunities, because I think what we see now happening in the maritime brings a lot of opportunities for us to be more efficient, more environmental, and even more safe. If you envision a vessel here, it used to be sailing alone on the open seas, far away from everything, with individual engines and components on board. What we see now is an integration of that data to be able for the crew on board to visualize how the vessel is operating, take better decisions, both related to safety, but also towards emissions, which is an important aspect. But not only is the vessel able to use such data when it's available, you can also send it to shore to the superintendents. They will be able to visualize what's happening, giving support to the crew, but also helping optimize maintenance and other tasks. If you continue that, to look at one vessel is probably not enough. So if a ship owner would like to look at a fleet, they can compare operational efficiency, navigation processes and decisions, and even retrofit options. So by having that comparison across fleets, I think each owner will be able to improve their operation, Further, there's a lot of other stakeholders in the maritime industry that have data and interact with vessels. And for me, if you would have vetting port state inspectors getting data to evaluate the safety of the vessel, then you may even have more time for the crew to operate the vessels, which would also increase uptime. Of course, you would also have onboard audits to check the competence of the crew, but many other things could be checked by data, reducing that impact and pressure. And the same with suppliers. DNV, we're also getting a lot of information about our customers' vessels. And why should we use it for our purpose only to evaluate it? We should also share that with the ship owner. So this is the view that we're moving towards. And I think this brings a lot of opportunities. But as we also should look at the risks, safety is what we are caring about. I think it's also important to visualize the potential challenges in this picture and development. First of all, cybersecurity is getting high on the agenda. It's almost not any day that you don't have a cybersecurity incident, or like the CrowdStrike, a more cyber safety software issue that suddenly brings down services across the world. So in such a connected world, you will have suppliers, you will have offices being able to connect to the vessel and support them. But if that will be taken over by a malicious actor, they could actually pose a safety risk to the vessels. We don't want a cruise ship close to shore with thousands of passengers on board in bad weather getting impacted their propulsion systems. So that's why cybersecurity is an important aspect. The second challenge that we see in this more connected future is the standardization and talking the same language. Because we see many systems talking together, but it's typically one-to-one, or there's a lot of manual Excel work for the people using the process. I think within maritime industry needs to agree to a certain standard how we talk together. And as the maritime industry is a bit more fragmented, you have many different suppliers, you have the yards, you have classes, owners, operators, ship managers. I think we need to come together to establish that. In the car industry, in the airline industry, it's more easy because maybe then Airbus or Boeing takes the lead making the standards for suppliers because they're so big. And the same for Volkswagen and Toyota, they have much more power over the cars, and they make also multiple entities of it. Vessels are more tailored. So cybersecurity and standardization is the key challenges that we see in this potential opportunity use that we have going forward. So the key enablers, in our opinion, to make this happen, the first one is cybersecurity. We should not make the maritime industry more digital if it would make it more unsafe. So that's the number one we need to address. The second one is what I talked about, to have standardization on data. You need to trust the data as well. So that means that the quality indicators, the authenticity of data, all that needs to be in place, all the way from the users or sensors up to the vessel server, but also towards shore and any other land-based data user. So this is the data infrastructure, maybe putting on board an onboard server. After that, I think maybe the number one challenge at the moment is the data sources, because there's so many components on board. There's so many different standards of how can they send out data. If anyone have been doing a project of how to visualize the full data of a vessel or a fleet, you probably have done a lot of manual work. So I would really appreciate if the industry over the next few years is able to agree to a common language of how data can be shared and indicated the quality of it. So these are the key enablers we work on. If you go for cybersecurity, which is the number one topic at the moment, it's probably also the most mature. We have cybersecurity regulation being in place for years. We have the EU NIS directive, and you have the IMO cybersecurity management and cybersecurity risk regulation has been in place for a few years. But as of 1st of July 2024, there are new unified IACS requirement coming into place. That means that any vessel being contracted after 1st of July this year have to have cybersecurity as part of the class role, no matter which class you work with. I think that's good because then we set a common standard to cybersecurity, preparing for connectivity. For your information, the IACS UR is divided into two parts. It's the E26 that looks at the owner's operation as well as the yard and the design. And you have the E27, which looks at supplier of equipment. So putting that together, owner operation, yard integration, and suppliers, it actually covers the full vessel. If you're asked which vessels and systems it's being applied to, you can say typically all vessels in international trade, cargo vessels, passenger vessels, But there are some exceptions, maybe national water, fishing vessels, navy vessels, private yachts, and those have been exempted from those requirements, but that's not the majority of the vessels we see in international trade. What I also want to see that even if those have been exempted, DNV has actually done voluntary approval of private luxury yachts and even navy vessels. The equipment we look at is the safety relevant equipment. So we don't look at the IT equipment on board, which handles critical information, but I see that you will handle that as you would do in the office, like in the DNV office, we handle cybersecurity on our computers, and that's the same on a vessel. But the IXUR looks on safety relevant equipment. Propulsion, steering, navigation, fire detection, and those equipment will need to be compliant. If I'm trying to, we don't have time to go too much into detail what the exact requirements are, but I'll give you an overview in this slide here. The important thing with cybersecurity is that you cannot do cybersecurity once with one action and it will be safe forever. Because if it's 100% safe, it's probably not usable. So it means that as the software develops, it needs also to have multiple barriers. On the top right here, you will see access control to a system. For example, an unauthorized access to a system is limited by managing who gets access to it. But that's only one access limitation. Another would be physical access. So who gets on board a vessel, who gets into which room, who has this access card. That's the next barrier that also complements the first one. Another one you can do is security zones, networks, firewalls, changing the logical layout of the vessel. Another barrier is password user identification, which comes on individual systems. Another barrier is then to set the strength. Is it a 4-number password or is it a 12-character with different characters, numbers, and special indicators? And also limited logins. You shouldn't be able to log in as many times as possible for a brute force attack. You should be limited, at least in time. It will even be also locking down the system if it's the service operator. Of course, the navigator should always have access to the electrical maps as an operator, but not being able to change the system. So these barriers build up on each other, and if one of them breaks, you still have the other ones, and that's the defense in depth approach we need for cybersecurity. The IXUR comprises of different levels here. So the first one we look at from the inside is the E27. It comprises about 40 security requirements linked to an IEC standard, how you configure and secure the systems. But it also looks not only on the actual system, it looks at the secure development processes. So it puts requirements towards suppliers to have patching in place and those aspects. And of course, it hardens the system of each delivery. So these are the supply requirements that needs to be met by equipment in scope. The next requirements is towards the yard integration. How's the network set up? How's the logical integration? And of course, how is remote access done? That's a typical shipyard. You can say that's the digital watertight sections of the vessels. And then, of course, the owner will operate the vessel and will keep the vessel over time secure and train the crew. So that's what we talk about the management system. So policies, procedures, management of change. So by having those 3 levels built up on E26 and E27, we believe the maritime industry will have the secure baseline to be more connected and digital going forward. That's a brief technical instruction. So in DNV, we have rules on it. We have rules on hull and stability, on machinery, and the cybersecurity rules are given in our part 6, chapter 5, section 21. You will find the requirements towards cybersecurity. In DNV, we have a class notation that aligns that the vessel is compliant. And we're now in the process of training our whole global organization, surveyors around the world, checking vessels in operation, but also at yards and at FAT with suppliers. So that's a key task that we're working on. But we had this, I think, back in 2017. Actually, DNV was developing the first version of their cybersecurity rules. It was a pilot together with the Kongsberg remote gateway in 2017, which turned out to be the rules in 2018. And we already then linked it to an IEC standard. I think that's a key, because that means that the equipment we put on board a vessel can use control system across industries. We don't have to develop expensive equipment only for the maritime industry. A PLC, a switch, which is secure for other manufacturing purposes, can also be used at maritime. This has now been applied to about 300 vessels and system, 200 vessels, 100 systems that have been contracted for approval already, even before the date. So that's what we're preparing for. And for us, DNV cannot do it alone, so we really reach out to suppliers, yards across the world to support them, and together with them, increase the security of vessels, such as owners can have that secure vessel for more digitalization. That was a little bit of view on the first aspect, cybersecurity. If I move now into the second aspect of communication and connectivity, I'm going to give you also a little bit of view on this. I say this is a bit more immature, we may say, but it's a bit more early in the phase. Cybersecurity becomes mandatory, while data infrastructure is a journey that we have started and working on, but it's not an agreed standard that becomes mandatory, but this will develop more over the next few years. But we had those rules a few years already, and it puts requirement to standardize data infrastructure that you can trust. So it means that it has requirement, how do you collect data? What is the buffer capacity? What is the quality? What do you do if data is missing? How do you make sure that timestamps, because if somebody is on fuel efficiency analysis of a fleet and they have different timings or different regions, you will not make any sense of it. So you need quality of data to be able to use it. So that's some of the requirements that we put into our rules. And the other part is the connectivity. You need also to have latency of connectivity. You need to have control. What if the connectivity goes down? How long can you buffer when you start losing data? So this is the link that there's also requirements towards. And finally, security is key. And even when DNV was done not using the mandatory IACS-UR, it had cybersecurity built into it. Now the DNV points directly to the IACS-UR requirements. It's a prerequisite to have that in place. And also data quality management. DNV is not only about the technical barriers, it's also about the procedures you have in place. So that's been continuously checked with the company using the link for different purposes. Trying to visualize what the DNV is all about. This is a connectivity. It may seem like an advanced vessel, but there's a lot of different chaos here. You see the vessel itself have the red boxes I tried to indicate here, which is actually not connected equipment. All that equipment can only have the data within itself. Then you have different streams here of data going through some different channels, and different broadband connectivity going down to different energy users. So it may be that you can do analysis of one type of data, but you cannot combine it. Let's say you want to look at energy efficiency. You can look at fuel performance there. You can look at condition-based maintenance on other data, but you cannot combine those to do maintenance based on saving fuel and saving maintenance costs. We think this infrastructure here is not really efficient. And that's why we're trying to support industry moving towards a standardized setup. We think this is the future. There are discussions which is the proper standard. There hasn't been ended on only one. You have the NMEA standard, the ISO 19847, 848, you have OPC UA, different standards are there, but DNV doesn't say that one standard is the correct one, as long as you can trust the data and you know it's secure and reliable. But one of the leading ones is the 19847 and 848. So by having that, you will actually have common APIs where each device can talk to themselves and talk to the others, gather on a remote server, and then send to shore with quality indicators, and then end users can start using it because they can trust the interfaces going around. Talk a little bit more about this ISO standard. So if you see here, the data collection happens on the vessels. You will have interfaces going to shore where you may use data. And the two standards, the 19847 is built about the protocols. So you can say that ensures the quality of data. But even if you know the quality of data, you also need to know what the data represent. And that's the 19848, so the naming convention. So trying to have the same name on different engine exhaust temperatures. So by having trusted data that you know you can trust, and then having common names, lays the boundaries of an efficient communication protocol. Looking a little bit more on the hardware that you have on board. So this is an example from the offshore industry. So you will have data logger source systems gathering data, but instead of each of one of them having a separate data stream, it's gathered on a vessel server. The vessel server has security built into it, but it also has a relay component that ensures cybersecurity. And then you come to one or more shore users that also do data quality management. That's an indicator of how data infrastructure is helping ensure security, but also on data quality of the communication. And the data sources on the left, I think that's the next big hurdle that we need to work on. So summarizing this overview of the digital transformation as we see it in the maritime industry, we think the new technologies will bring opportunities. I think it's imperative that we use them, but I think it's important to take safety. The maritime industry is extremely good in safety across the globe, and we need also to handle this topic with respect to safety. And it cannot be done safely without cybersecurity. We see an increased geopolitical tensions in the world. Global trade, shipping, as well as the energy sector is in the core of that globalization. So the threat definitely goes up. But I think by having a more connected and digital, we can operate more efficiently, and we should leverage standardized protocols for that, both for cybersecurity as well for communication. And DNV, especially on cybersecurity, we have a very founded approach towards this, which is now getting standardized in industry, and we're also working strongly also with data to see how that may be supported. So that's how we try to support the industry, by clear cybersecurity requirements and also supporting the industry setting a common language to talk together as a standard. Thank you. I'll then hand over to Jan Tore to talk a little bit their journey.
Jan Tore, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Jarle. Good aspects on the different parts of the data infrastructure and cybersecurity. So I'll share a bit on how we in KDI, and especially in the Vessel Insight product, are kind of how's the history first for our cybersecurity kind of efforts or alignment. And we can see, of course, as the industry matures, we are kind of following up with responding to regulations, etc. I think that will be kind of a key point to take away from this. So as mentioned by Jarle, we started early, actually before the Vessel Insight product launch, even with type approval of our VPN communication backbone, which is utilized in our data collection solutions back in 2017. So we launched the Vessel Insight data collection infrastructure product in 2019, and of course we wanted to have a type approved solutions which was aligned with cybersecurity regulations, etc. But it was not mature enough at that point, so we did let's say a custom kind of approval with DNV in a technical qualification at that point. So after that we did a review of the DINF, which DNV came up with at that time, 2019, 2020, and we did the first DINF type approval in 2022. So, and our role is collecting the data. So we did the DINF type approval based on that perspective. So not necessarily kind of a sharing data platform on the vessel at that time, but collecting the data. And yeah, I think maybe we were one of the first, maybe the first to achieve this DINF certification. But we did also some certification together with ABS to address the US and align to the US market. And we had the first renewal of our DINF type approval together with DNV this a few months ago. So that's brief kind of overview of the history there. And we see, of course, as mentioned, as we open up the networks and the solutions on the vessel to the outside world, more and more of these kind of focus on cybersecurity is needed. And we see, of course, customer has been interested all the time in cybersecurity, but as these regulations come into play, like the IMO cybersecurity and latest the IX, customers are looking for answers to these regulations, and in many cases we can offer them from our products already. So that's it's of course it takes some effort to align, but once you are aligned with the core principles, I think it's easier to follow up and apply the same process and systematic approach to your new products as well. So focusing a bit on the DINF type approval that we did in 2-3 years ago. So the type of approval, the DINF, as mentioned, it's kind of, well, simplified. It consists of 2 types of requirements: functional, which covers like management and data quality, including in addition to collecting the data, there's also the cybersecurity. So, and at this point, when DNV released the DINF type approval, it was the cybersecurity was a kind of a subset of the cybersecurity level 1, SP1 level from DNV. So we added a few things to the scope at that time. We saw that the data interfaces, which is kind of the next hurdle, according to Jarle, is we wanted to focus on having a kind of a secure and flexible approach to introducing a new data interfaces, because we want it to be our solution to be kind of scalable and cost efficient, at the same time complying to cybersecurity regulations. So we added a kind of a part on the data interfaces, and I'll drill a bit down into it in my next slide. In addition, so we did the cybersecurity assessment on the full cybersecurity level SP1 from DNV. So we took like the full list and did the assessment of the product based on that. So these are the 2 additional kind of scoped things we added to our type approval when we did the first approval. And then in the recent in the first renewal we included, of course, the IX. So that's the IX 27. And of course, you can ask, why do we need IX 27? We are kind of collecting data, but the Vessel Insight solution, we're also installing some hardware and some pieces of equipment onto the vessel, and we are connecting into the vessel kind of networks, and that's why we want to, as a supplier, we want to have that stamp of approval. In addition, of course, we're looking a bit forward into the future, and we did an additional kind of assessment on the cybersecurity levels, and we added some parts of the SP3 level, which is kind of the most advanced level in the cybersecurity from DNV classification. And the reason we did this was to kind of be prepared for the future requirements for autonomy vessels. So that one we added as well. So this is the kind of the structure and the approach we had to our certification. So we're clubbing kind of some parts into the same approvals. So let's go a bit into the data interfaces, because I think this is one of the kind of biggest learning and experiences from the kind of the process together with DNV and our journey in this cybersecurity certification is that is how we treat data interfaces, and because we have to balance the flexibility we need to monitor and manage these interfaces from our management services, which is centralized and lives on the internet. We have to balance that to the cybersecurity posture that we kind of add to the vessel. So we in our first DNV scope, we added 3 types of interfaces, and they're based or classified based on their risk profile and sometimes somewhat interface protocol. But the underlying cybersecurity principle we want to comply with is the kind of the layering, the network layers, you can say, that exist on the vessel. So the lower you get in the level of network, the closer you get to the operational networks and the processes on the vessel. So referred to in many cases as OT networks. So, and because our approach is to be able to introduce new interfaces, and based on the risk, we can kind of quicker introduce new interfaces if the risk is low. But if we have to kind of go lower into the layers, we need to ensure that it won't be as quick, but we will ensure that we have the cybersecurity and we don't jeopardize the operation of the vessel. So and these three types of interfaces, they will have slightly different approval process, but they will all end up in a combined approved data interface list that we can kind of include new interfaces into in an approved state. So our first type of interface is like it's approved by design, and it's a combination of protocol, software components, and hardware components and topology. So, and this is typically Modbus NMEA, where we can ensure that we have like a read-only approach to the lower networks from a higher level, let's say. So that's changes to this design or the topology has to undergo class approval. But we can add new instances of these interfaces that follow this design as a general approach. The next one is what we refer to as approved by design verification. So this is where we don't necessarily have the same possibility to ensure unidirectional flow from higher security levels to lower. So this could be like if we need to install a data collection component onto an OT system or into an OT network. So in this case, it's a more extended assessment that we have to do to make sure we don't impact or do anything that can affect the operation of that vessel. The last one is a process where KDI, where we ourselves can do the approval, and this is where we have data sources giving data to us from like higher levels in the network, right? Further away from the OT layers, and this approval is based on let's say an approved template, which includes risk assessment, design and topology drawings, test reports, etc. So this is the last, and as industry matures and kind of the different equipment vendors on the vessels gain kind of more and more kind of data sharing capabilities, we see we can move further up through the network layers. So I think it's crucial for the industry to ensure that the equipment vendors produce cybersecure data sharing capabilities and allow for both data sharing partners or data collection partners to utilize that data higher up in the security landscape. So yeah, this was kind of the most important learning, and the most kind of what we see is kind of giving us possibility to move forward in digitalizing data collection from vessels. Yeah, that was my story. Over to you, Durga. I think you're on mute as well.
Can you see my screen? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a fantastic wrap up from you, Jan Tore. I'm sure with the data source standardization, we will definitely reach to the level what we are looking forward for. We certainly are forerunners in managing our product aligned with cybersecurity requirements and policies and provide data quality securely. And it's evident from our stakeholders and customers' satisfaction. I would definitely say that. With that, we will start our panel discussion now. I would request all the audience, please submit your questions and reflections in the QA section, and our experts will address them after the panel discussion. So let's go with the first question to Jarle. I would like to know, or the audience would like to know, is the market or industry primarily seeking certified digital infrastructure solutions? Do we have any statistics to support this?
I think what we see today is that for cybersecurity, this is definitely a mandatory that almost everybody wants it, and this is becoming a ticket to trade. I think all around us we have probably friends that has family relatives who've been hustled for money on the internet. So and you have heard about the big incident. It's not only small companies. Everybody knows about the Maersk incident. I think one of the biggest and most professional companies in our industry. So this is key. And cybersecurity is people have understood it and they are going for it. For data infrastructure, we're still in a little bit of a process where we are finding ourselves. So there's a lot of discussion how to do it. What's the most efficient way to do it? And I think I see a lot of pilots. People take data, they use it for one case, and they struggle a little bit to scale it up for a fleet. We have done some type approvals of remote onboard servers for major players in the maritime industry, but it's currently towards more of the forerunners are testing it out and doing it in a standardized way. Then I think the industry has not yet found and cemented the actual way of doing it. And I think there are probably two key challenges in that aspect. One is the data sources, because you struggle to add sources, you struggle to add vessels, you struggle because so many differences and so different quality of it. But I think we also are a little bit in the way of finding ourselves what are the use cases where we actually can improve operation. I think that's the two key elements.
Yeah, that's quite a good insight, Jarle. Jan Tore, do you have anything to say about this?
No, I completely agree. The hard part is doing that standardization across the fleet, and not only the fleet but cross fleets. So you have different partner solutions that want to utilize the same standardized data across the different customers, and I think this is an enabler.
Yeah.
To achieve scalable solutions is to achieve that, and this is what we are working very hard to try to solve in KDI with a Vessel Insight solution.
Yeah. Well said. And the next question would be, are the customers' demand driving the data infrastructure solution providers towards certification, or the policymakers influencing this trend? Jarle.
Yes, that's a good question. I think the certification we had so far when it comes to data infrastructure is more towards suppliers building trust into their solution, so that somebody has said, hey, the data is actually here treated properly, and what you get, you can use, and you can trust the data you have. It's more a commercial requirement that drives the use of data. There's not so many requirements as far as we've seen of how data have to be qualified. But I believe that may change over the next few years when we really start paying taxes on environmental data and using that for very strict purposes. I think then it's difficult for the industry to use data which cannot be traced back to the source and the quality of it. So I would expect that is something that may be increasing over time. But currently we see strong regulation on cybersecurity, but limited on data verification.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe what incentives do yards and ship owners receive for using only type approved solutions? Is there any connection to insurance, for example, Jarle?
I think insurance is, as far as maybe the insurance industry should reply to that one, but my understanding of discussions with them, they base their premiums mostly on statistics.
Okay.
And as there's not so much available statistics, and many of the new solutions coming out have not been founded so much in statistics, they seem to be open to discuss around premiums, but I don't think there's any direct translation of giving lower premiums due to having those solutions in place, because I don't think they have so much statistics yet on it. That's my impression, but that of course the insurance companies should talk more about. When it comes to the yards and owners, why do they would like to have a certified or class solution? I think it's the same if you have a hull of a vessel. It's good to have somebody independent review it, which you trust, which have the competence. That's the role we play, no matter if it's the strength of the hull, the reliability of the machinery, or the security of the digital connectivity. So that's how we see our role.
Yeah. I guess there are a lot of questions from audience which we need to respond. I think it'll be interesting to see, but I have a couple of questions to ask, but I will just end up with one more question. We can take another question if we have any time left after the question and answer from the audience. So the final question to you, Arle. Is DNV prepared at the requirements level for autonomy type approval what is the current status regarding ROC, that's Remote Operating Center, and vessels with respect to autonomy?
I think we've talked about cybersecurity being something that everybody needs, and data connectivity, data onshore centers being somebody that is being piloted and driven by at least the bigger players. I think data connectivity brings the basis for future autonomous supervised vessels, but also remotely controlled vessels. DNV is now working with several players on autonomy, but I think that's even more on a pilot status. Maybe it's the extreme sport of digitalization still, but I think the data connectivity is at least used for one-way connectivity, sending data out. But if you want to have a remote access steering connectivity, it should probably be in a different stream, because you need to limit the access to it and not increase the access as you want with data sharing. But I guess you, Jan Tore, can also talk a little bit about your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit two different two different solutions to do two different problems, right? So, but nevertheless, it's we will. I think we will in the future see a kind of a blend where we utilize some of the same solutions for both. But yeah, it's a bit into the future still, I think.
Yeah, but I guess the requirements and regulations for the autonomy will be more stricter than the just data sharing the framework, for example, because we are going to talk to the OT systems, right? Like, and then operate from the remote, which is going to be more dangerous than just monitoring and then seeing the data and take the value from the data. So I guess like DNV will come with interesting facts and regulations and policies going forward for autonomy, which we are like eagerly waiting for. Just to end with, I would like to really have a word from you, Jarle. You have been journeying with us for the past 5 years with the Kongsberg Group. How was your experience with us? And do you feel like we are doing better and better every time when we go for the certification and renewals?
I think what is important for DNV is that we work together with leading companies in the maritime industry, not only Kongsberg, but other leading companies. And if DNV would be sitting alone in our offices making rules, it may not be the best ones. Yeah. So that's why we really appreciate working together with key stakeholders, yards, owners, suppliers, because then only then we can make rules which are usable with industry. We like to work with, as you were a pioneer in the cybersecurity part, but we need to work with big players, small players, because we want to help the maritime industry in total. So we really appreciate this cooperative attitude to finding good standards and requirements.
Yeah, it's collaboration is the key for the success, and we collaborate very well with each other. Jarle, I would like to really recognize that and appreciate your support for getting the certification with the Kongsberg Digital. Thanks a lot for the support, Jarle. Let's go with the question and answer. There are many interesting questions, I guess. I would like to read one from Fu. What are the challenges, if any, for integrating third-party components into maritime systems, and how to ensure security for the integration?
Yeah, I can probably say a few words about this. This is the reason we approached our data interfaces the way we did was to ensure that we have a kind of ensuring the security for these interfaces, and the solution we came up with, as I said, was to kind of classify the types of interfaces based on risk profile and have a kind of a repeatable and good process that would in some cases need class approval, but for many of them which don't have such impact on vessel operation, we can have a more lean process to get those approved. So it all comes down to the kind of the risk based assessment you have to do for each type of interface, or basically for each interface, I would say.
Yeah, and he has posted another interesting question. We may need to take it. We at Sintef worked with the DNV on the topic of data quality in an EU project. Can't agree with you more. Nowadays, there are more data-driven processes, including AI solutions. Do you know any standard or related work that start addressing cybersecurity for AI components in maritime systems? It's an interesting question.
Now we maybe go in some ways even beyond this, at least the simple autonomous systems. But maybe first going back to your questions on autonomy and cybersecurity, because in my head there, if you can connect to a vessel out in operation, bad weather at high sea, and do changes on the configuration of the main engine or anything else, right? You can disable the vessel or cause a safety relevant incident. If you have an autonomous vessels, you will also have access to changes on the principle of access to critical equipment is similar. Of course, it's one off and if somebody can fix it, and then the other one will be continuous. But there are quite a few similarities on remote maintenance and cybersecurity. And for remote maintenance, we have good cybersecurity practices in place. I think that's what we're going to build upon for autonomy. When it comes to AI, I guess AI is a broad expression, so maybe narrowing in for at least my understanding of AI is machine learning, it's data analytics. So you use a lot of data and you come up with a software, a program, a code that finds a solution based on data analytics. And the data analytics is so complex that the human mind cannot easily comprehend it. I think that's the key challenge by adding AI technology, because how can we verify something that we cannot understand? When we verify cybersecurity now for equipment, we go into, we look at firmware code, we look at configuration, we look at check, it's okay. But if the AI is so complex that you cannot really understand how it comes to the solution, and then it's going to handle any case, so it's very difficult to test everything. I think that's the key challenge with AI. I think AI verification is still in its early phases, so even verification is early. And when it comes to security, I heard stories that you can have this face recognition in an airport for passports, right? That can work for thousands of persons, but how can you ensure that it wasn't built in that when that person comes, it always lets through? Then you need to test the equipment to every person in the world. So it's very difficult to fully test AI equipment. So I think that's the key challenge with security of AI, is to verify that it always is correct, that it doesn't have a backdoor in. And that is something that needs to be worked on. And in my understanding, AI verification and detailed cybersecurity verification is still in its more in the R&D phase actually at the moment.
Yeah, and I think also the privacy, to protect the privacy of our customers' data is also coming into play into this, because the AI kind of the models, they thrive on data. So but we need to be tread carefully. And I know KDI in different industries we're doing exactly that. We're limiting the data to protect privacy. So
maybe adding on, I think it's okay to use AI to come up with maybe a suggestion on how to make the route more optimized, right? As long as the captain goes through it. But to use AI to automatically steer the vessel, then you need a totally different level of verification. So making AI to, I don't know, choosing the ads that you may show on the internet is probably not so safety critical, but using AI in a very safety critical navigation task, it's more challenging at the moment, as far as I believe.
Yeah, I guess the policymakers as well need to like really align with the international policymakers for the AI standards. It's a long journey, I think. Like the time will tell. I would say. There is another interesting question from Captain Hendrik. May I ask how you see the new electronic logbooks or record books sitting in these cybersecurity landscapes and IACS UR rules? Is an e-log to be seen as a critical safety systems? So sort of an OT system, even these are usually in the IT network. Or is this more of an additional IT system on board?
Let me starting from our side. I'm not an expert on the e-log books we have. That's taken by our navigation team. But an e-logbook doesn't have direct impact on the operation and vessel control. As such, I don't believe it's part of the IACS minimum compliance scope, but I believe there are ongoing discussions about cybersecurity of e-logbooks as you said, authenticity of that data is so key because it can be used for insurance claims and so forth.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is definitely relevant there, but my current understanding is that it's outside of the IACS scope, which is to safe operation, not necessarily all the legal requirements and data storage.
Yep. We have an interesting question from Brewer, our colleague. When it is unified requirements, why do not DNV approve other class societies' approval of these requirements? Jarle.
Yeah, it's a good question. So if it's the same, then why couldn't we do that? I think it comes a little bit towards, the mutual, you have EU Med directive, right? Where an ACTIS can be approved by anyone and put on a standardized network and it puts on, but those mutual recognition typically done by standalone components. So if you have one component put somewhere and you check that component alone, then it's okay. But when you come to cybersecurity, the integration of the vessel is so important. And if we would check the whole automation network that it was secure, and we would put a few other devices directly on that network, it would be like Kongsberg or DNV allowing any different computer to connect to the network. So you cannot be responsible for integration without checking each component. That makes it difficult both in liability and responsibility. But I hope that this unified requirement, unified standard building on IEC will make the process of other approving pre-approved equipment much more efficient because it's basically the same requirement. There should be a lot of efficiency gains in that aspect, but a direct approval without looking at it would put our integrational verification at risk.
Yep. That's nice. One more question. Kuldeepak Padnekar, could you please guide us on how to conduct a cybersecurity audit? Specifically, we would appreciate insights into key steps, tools, and best practices involved in the process.
I guess that is more outside the capacity of this webinar.
Section, yeah.
We look more at technical aspects.
Yeah.
But I would say you have the ISM is a good aspect of how to treat safety of a vessel, the International Safety Management Code. They have added cybersecurity towards this as well. And I would think cybersecurity is just another safety aspect. What you do with safety is you check, do you have competent people there? Do you have processes in place? Do you have continuous improvement? Do you manage to change your doing? Do you have an asset inventory, have a transparency of what you have? I would build on the aspects that you have in ISM and apply that in a cybersecurity context. That's we need, and you need to have it documented, because by having documentation, you will do it aligned, but you would also need to have people that are living it and knowing it. So an experienced ISM auditor checking safety would need knowledge on cybersecurity and apply it in the same dimensions. That would be my best recommendation in the part. You have ISO 27000, all the standards that you can align with, but ISM is a good starting point for the maritime industry.
Yep, I guess he can contact DNV as well to know the process and steps to be followed. That would be the best advice, I would say. But there is another interesting question with which I would like to wrap it up, because we are approaching the end time. Jagadish, do we have any standardization on the data interface and infrastructure minimum requirements for structural, meteorological, oceanographic, or environmental data?
At least that's not something I'm knowledgeable about. They maybe exist, but it's not in the key as far as I'm aware. But definitely there are standards in all different areas, but I'm not aware of it. There's something need to take on the outside. I don't know if you and Jan Tore have more information.
So what you talked about earlier about the ISO, the standardization of that's the kind of this, you could say that's an effort to standardize the structural kind of how to structure the data. But when it comes to more like types of data. I think there's, of course, the NMEA has some standardization on environmental data or positional data and such, but yeah, don't have any other comments to that. No.
I think they probably exist, but we're not fully aware of the whole standard yet because there are many different use purposes. And I guess we definitely have an expert somewhere in DNV that knows this topic very well, but it's not on my plate.
Yeah, I think like we got a lot of interesting questions today in this webinar. People are interested to know more about the cybersecurity risks and how to like deal with that, how to mitigate. I think it's really a eye-opener discussion between you and Jan Tore Jarle. Thank you so much for the quite interesting insights from both of you, experts. So I guess like everybody has got some good insights from you both. With that, I would like to thank both of you for joining us in webinar today with Kongsberg Digital. I guess this was useful for the audience. Please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A session. If possible, we will respond in the Q&A session. There are many questions due to the time constraint. We were not able to take all the questions. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you back with another interesting topic. Thank you.